shadow in the government's game. Pawn as a child with no face and no name. They stole my past to leave me cold and alone. Always searching for a place I could call home. I was lost in the dark, just a tool in the hand, till she pulled me close and helped me understand. Now the fire inside is starting to rise. I can see the truth through 1,000 lies. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a hellhound beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. In the dead of the night, I can hear the call. All the ghosts of my past scratching through the wall. My eyes change colors, the power has grown. With Crowley the hound, I'm never alone. I used to be hollow, a man made of glass, but now I am reclaiming every year that has passed. Every memory is falling right back into place. I know every name and I remember every face. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a hellhound beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. I ain't running no more, yeah, I'm ready to fight. Gonna settle that debt in the depth of the night. They tried to break me, they tried to erase, but they can't hide the blood from the scars on my face. The veil is thin and the engine is hot. I'm taking back everything that they thought I forgot. Now I tear through the veil, leave holes in the sky. I can read every thought in the blink of an eye. Danica, my witch, she's the magic in me. Yeah, I finally found what they took from me. With a hellhound beside me, I'm standing my ground. No longer a ghost that's never been found. I remember it all now. Every single face, I'm calling for you in the dead of the night.
Good evening. My name's Henry. This here will be the third part. Anyway, if you remember, been talking about when I lived in a haunted house, and got a photo here of what the house looked like. Now this photo was taken with my cousin's class, their senior picture. Wasn't long after that, and that house burnt down, and she gave me this photo because she had a lot of bad luck with it, and her mom got in a bad way, bad accident. She had bad accident. They contributed to this picture. Well, when they give me the picture, pretty much begging me to take it, when I took it over, their bad luck seemed to stop. So here's what the house looked like. Just kind of excuse the kids sitting in the windows and the doors and stuff, but this is what it was. This house was worse than the Amityville house ever thought about being. You can see one of the old outbuildings right there. Anyway, get back to the story now. And just so y'all know, I am writing a book about my life. I've got the first book done, and there's going to be several books that covers everything from A to Z that happened from the beginning pretty much present day. And I will be getting the first book published sometime here in the near future. And when I do, I'll give an update. You can also go to the photo areas. I do got photos over there, and there's the shorts, and I hope you all enjoy the stories, and subscribe and give me a likes up if you really like it. I'd sure appreciate it. Well, we'll get back to the story now. All this stuff I'm telling you is true. I can prove all of it. So they're not just stories, they're things that happen throughout my lifetime. My life's been full of mystery and I guess you'd call it adventure. Been in a lot of projects and involved with a lot of things. And as you get to know me, you'll realize that my world's always been turned upside down, and the things you all take for granted, I'm still learning. Wasn't born like the rest of you. I was a lab child and always been in and out of the projects, and the projects ain't a place that you live, it's these projects, like the Rainbow Project, Montauk. Even went back to the Philadelphia experiment and gathered information. Anyway, anyway, back to the farm. Things started really ramping up, and one day, my dad's sister's husband, my uncle, I won't use his name because I don't have his permission. He was the one that was a plumber, and he come out and put the hot water heater, fix it downstairs in my last story. And anyway, he come out one day and was gonna go downstairs and check the pump out. And I went with him. Well, while he was down there, he was gonna take a look at the back of the wash machine, the dryer, and make sure that everything was okay so it didn't cause a house fire, make sure the lint was cleaned and wiring was still okay, mice and nothing had chewed on it. Because live out in the country, you know, you do have mice problems. So he was just going to give everything a double check, and I got to go with him downstairs in that old creepy dank basement. Hey, we were down there and he pulled the wash machine, unhooked it, and pulled it away from the wall, and he was going to take the back cover off and check the wiring and make sure there wasn't a bunch of lint and stuff, and checked everything out. When he pulled out, there was a little door behind those, tucked away there in the wall, little wooden door, wasn't over about 3 foot wide, about 3 foot tall, had a latch on it. So my uncle took me upstairs with him, and he asked my mom if she knew anything about that door and where it led to, and said she didn't have a clue. He said, "That's just weird. You mind if I opened up and take a look in there?" She goes, "No. Knock yourself out." So me and him go downstairs, and he unhooks the latch, and we open that door up, and he shined a flashlight in there, and it was concrete rock walls in there, and the floor had looked like cobblestone in the floorway, but you had to go down 3 steps to get to that, like a lower basement. It sat underneath the basement that we was in. So he proceeded to go squeeze through that little doorway, because he is pretty tall for his time. And I followed behind him, and we walked around, and the basement that was under the basement was a little bit bigger than the basement we just come out of. He he's shining the wall, around at the walls, and we're looking and exploring. Well, when you went down those steps, you looked to the left, and at the end down there was another door. But this door was kind of like an arch. So, went to that door, and he pushed the old thumb handle down, then reached up and done the latch, and we opened that door up. Looked like a arched hallway. So he told me to hang on to his belt loop, and he'd walk slow. He was shining, I guess, looking for creepy crawlies and snakes and whatnot. We walked and walked and walked, and it was real damp and dark. The walls were kind of damp. We followed it. Seemed like forever to me with my little short legs, but I followed, trying to keep up best I could. I had both hands on that belt loop. He wasn't going to lose me. Nothing else, he might drag me, but he wasn't going to lose me. So I'm following along, and we just kept walking and walking. Finally, come to the end, after it seemed like we walked for an eternity, and the floor was flat, but then it kind of started tapering upward. And he shined kind of in front and above us, and there was like an old cellar door there, but it was steel. So he undone what they call a storm latch, and he flipped one of the doors up, popped his head up like a rabbit out of a hole, and we went up that little grade. I'm guessing at one time it was probably stairs, but the weather had kind of beat them down, so it was more like a grade, like a terrace grade, sort of. We stepped out into the woods, looking around trying to get our bearings straight, like, where in the hell are we at? Well, as we looked around, we spotted the old tractor, the old Oliver, and realized that we was way back in the field, in the woods by the field, headed out toward the highway. So my uncle kind of looked around and decided that we better head back, that my mom might be getting kind of worried, especially if she opens up that door to the basement and walks down there and we're gone, even though we told her we was going to go check it out. So I went in first. My uncle gave me the flashlight, and he pulled the door shut, the storm door, and latched the latch. He took the flashlight, and I grabbed a hold of his belt loop again, and back home we headed. It seemed like it took forever to get back, because it took forever to get there. And so we're walking along, and he's looking for creepy crawlies. He wasn't too fond of spiders, and I for darn sure wasn't. We never seen any, but we made it back to that lower basement. Got in there, and he shut the door there, and we headed toward the 3 steps going up. I went through first, and of course, being small, I didn't have to duck or squeeze. I just went on through it. Of course, he was a lot bigger, and he was a moaning and groaning as he come up the steps and trying to lower himself down almost to his hands and knees, come through that doorway. He proceeded to check out the washing machine, dryer, and everything checked out okay, so he put everything back together and plugged everything in and hooked up the different hoses and the drains, pushed everything back, and he rested over there and flipped the breaker to the washing machine and dryer. He gathered up his tools in a 5-gallon bucket, put his flashlight in there, and when we got to the steps to go up, he told me to go ahead and go ahead of him, that way in case I fell, he could catch me. Went up the stairs and got top stairs. He pulled the light string and kicked the light off. And I First place I hit was for the refrigerator. He pulled out a chair there at the kitchen table, and Mom come out of the living room. She goes, everything check out okay? And he goes, yeah. He said, but you might want to get a padlock and behind the wash machine and padlock that door so nobody gets back in there and gets lost. She goes, well, where to go to? And he goes, into a lower basement. She said, well, what took you guys so long? He said, well, there's another door at the other end. And it's a big old tunnel. Comes that way back there in the field toward the highway. Mom goes, you shit me? And he goes, no. He said, there's a big, like a storm basement door. At the end, you open and you come out in the ditch there by the field. So you might want to kind of keep that latch in case somebody would ever find that in the woods and get in and sneak in your house in the middle of the night. Put a padlock on it. She goes, next time I go in town, I'll get one. He goes, but I latched it, all the doors, but I'd still get a padlock and put in there. Mom, she wrote down a piece of paper, padlock, put it up on the notepad keeper, and she always checked it before we went to town. So if there was anything she forgot, it was on that pad, and she'd grab it and pick it up. Well, my uncle sat there and ate some fried chicken and giving me crap. Asked me if I was big enough to go fishing. Yeah. That's my other uncle. He worked on me a pole. He goes, well, I'll come out and we'll go back there and hit that pond and see if there's any fish in it. 'Cause we had a big pond back by the machine shed. So, seen him to his old car, and he put the bucket in the back floorboard of the car in the seat, and he headed off up the road, up the driveway, and was going to go home. So my Mom, she waited on the porch for me, and as he drove away, I walked back toward the porch, and a real uneasy feeling set it in. Couldn't put my finger on it. Of course, I was a kid. Maybe it was because my uncle was there and we spent a little bit of time together and he had to leave. But in any case, we sat there on the porch and enjoyed the breeze. Later on, my mom's brother and my dad come back from the field. So we walked out to the gate and waited to greet them. Anyway, Dad asked how everything went. Mom said everything went cool. She told him about the door and the hallway and the tunnel that led back to the field. My dad said, well, that's weird. So he come in the house and was sitting there at the kitchen table, and he goes, so I heard you had a big day. I said, yeah. Me and my uncle were down there in the basement, and then we went down to the lower basement. We followed it back to the field, and it took us out to a field where the old Oliver is. He goes, well, hell, we was in the field next to that one, just there on the other side of the woods. We didn't see them, but we seen where they parked the old Oliver. So I was telling him about it, and he said, well, it sounded like something out of a novel. Hell, I didn't think my dad ever read a novel. So, I was just glad he was paying attention to me and he wasn't pissed off, wasn't drunk. From then on, my dad was kind of my hero. I always looked up to him. He was like an old western cowboy. And when you're a kid, you kind of try to forget about the bad times of drinking and the ass whoopings. You just concentrate on the good times, and let the bad times kind of slide through a rock, and they go into a file. Hopefully you don't keep going back to them, but you do anyway. You're human. So he told me, he said, here, your uncle going to take you fishing. I said, yeah. He said he would come out and get me, and we go back to the pond and check it out. So come today, my uncle come back out, and he said, well, you ready to go drown a few worms? Hell yeah. I still like fishing today. I don't get to do much of it, but I like to fish. I guess if I had a heaven, it'd have my witch beside me on one side and my hellhound on the other side and the fishing pole between my legs. I don't give a shit if I catch anything. I just like to watch that water and watch that cork. Fascinating as hell. So anyway, me and my uncle load up. He drives past the machine shed, and I told him, I said, right up here, that road veers off to the left. Follow that, it takes us across the levee, and that one side's got a whole bunch of trees, nice and shady over there. So he pulls in there, and we park the car. He gets out, and he said, here, the short guys get to carry the worms. I'll carry the pole and the bucket and the lawn chairs and tackle box. It's fine by me. He gave me a job, so we headed down beside the trees there and found us a good spot. We start setting everything down, and he's unfolding lawn chairs, and by God, he even had a lawn chair that just my size. He unfolded it for me, and I took a spot in there, and he put the pole holders in the ground, and he baited the hooks, and he didn't want me to stick a hook through my finger. He goes, now, to catch the big fish, you grab that there hook, don't get it in your fingers, but you grab the end of it where the loop is, there by the swivel, and you spit on that hook. He said, every time you pull that line out, you gotta spit on that hook, because them fish, that just drives them nuts. Well, I believed him. I didn't know he was telling me a fish tale, but I did what he said. I spit on that hook. He spit on his and tossed our hooks with our corks on it out there. And wasn't long and them old corks started bobbing. Before I knew it, we had a stringer full of sunfish, and we was having a good time sitting there. Got one stringer full of fish, and he goes, well, you think we ought to call today? Because we've been there a few hours fishing. I said, well, do you have to go? He goes, no. He said, we can stay and fish a little longer if you want to. So we sat there, and before you know it, we had another stringer of sunfish. Now we got 2 stringers, 4-foot stringers, with these fish. Them fish, they was biting that day. Nice, beautiful day out. We was having a good time talking, and he give me shit, telling me fish stories. Of course, back then, I believed everything he told me. I didn't know he was full of shit. And I mean that in a good way. He was a good-hearted man, and he just liked to laugh and joke. And that's just my way of saying that it was his way of joking around with me. And of course, I ate that up. That was a lot of good attention. I learned a lot from him in later years. But we sat out there, and he'd laugh. He told me, did you ever catch any catfish? I said, I don't even know what a catfish is. I don't think I ever seen one. He said, well, next time we'll set the lines a little deeper and we'll do some catfishing. Gotta use some beef liver for that and beef heart. Hey, I'm in. What do they look like? He said, well, they're a slick fish. They don't have scales. They got skin like humans, but it's real slimy and slick. Yes, they have 3 horns. Horns? You mean like on a cow? He goes, well, sort of. He said they're fins. But at the very beginning of that fin, there's a point that comes out, and he said it's hollow. And he said up on top, behind their head, they got another fin. There's another big spike. If one of them ever horns you, he said you take that catfish, same catfish, turn him in your hand over on his back. And if he poke you in the finger, you rub that on his belly and get that slime on there to kill the pain. He said, I'll show you when we catch one. He said, how to grab them so they can't horn you. He said, that's what they call it when they poke you with that. It's called being horned. I thought he was joking, but next time we went fishing, I found out the hard way. I rushed in there and grabbed that fish, and before he'd get a word out, I done grabbed it and poked the horn in my finger. It did hurt. It hurt pretty bad. He said, here. And he turned the old catfish over, and I rubbed my finger, and it just killed the pain. I don't know what it is that kills the pain, but it did work. So you might want to keep that in your mind if you ever get horned by a catfish. Turn him over and rub that spot you got poked on his belly till it gets real slimy and it killed the pain. Well, anyway, we was sitting there fishing, and I noticed my uncle looking across the pond. That pond was pretty good size. He kept looking over there toward the other side of the road and there in the woods. And all of a sudden he said, we better get out of here. He was kind of serious, and I was like, well, that's funny because he's never ever totally serious. But he had a worriness in his voice, concern. So we started pulling the poles in and getting everything rounded up and walked back to the car. And he started poking things in the car, and then he opened up the front door and said, well, hop in. He picked me up, set me behind the steering wheel, and I slid over to the other side. Of course, back in those days, nobody ever wore seatbelts. It wasn't never enforced, and there wasn't no such thing as car seats. So you was left to your own devices. So as we were driving along, he's still watching over there across the old dirt road that we come in on. We got up there where the road that comes across the levee meets the dirt road that we was going to head back on home, and he stopped. I said, what do you see? You see a deer or something? Maybe no turkey? He goes, no. There's a big-ass dog that was standing over there. And he said, I don't remember there being no hill. But he said, if there wasn't no hill, then that dog was standing up. I said, what kind of dog would it look like? He said, kind of like a wolf or a German Shepherd, all black. I said, we seen one of them. And I said, my uncle said it was a werewolf that tried to get in the machine shed with us. He goes, I'll get the hell out of here. He kind of chuckled a little bit, but he kept an eye out. We headed on back toward the house, and so we back to the house. He said, well, one of these stringers of fish are yours. Your mom and your other uncle, they'll help you clean them. I'm going to take my fish and head on home before they dry out. He said goodbye to my mom, and he headed on up the road. So I was dragging my stringer along, and my mom said she would get a bucket of water and put them fish in there so they get the dirt cleaned off, where I drug them through the grass coming up the path there to the house. So she goes and gets a bucket and gets the hose out and fills the bucket up, put them fish in there, and of course they started splashing around. They wasn't dead. They were still alive. Well, I thought that was funny as hell, watching them fish, because you can't see them in a pond. You know, that water kind of blue and murky. I was busy watching them splash in there at each other and getting splashed myself in the face. Of course, you live on a farm, it ain't like living in the city. In the city, they try to keep you clean. But in a farm, why, it's an honor to get dirty. So I was a typical farm kid. I was sitting there getting splashed by fish water, and my mom told me to keep my hands out of there so I didn't get poked by the fins on top of the sunfish. Sunfish is just a green-looking bluegill, almost like a rock bass. They're good eating, though. Of course, back in those days, we didn't fillet them. We just cook them whole. Nowadays, if I was fishing, I'd be filleting them because they almost like potato chips. You get started on them damn things, you just can't quit. They're good eating. Well, I'd rather have that than a big old steak. Especially if you give me a slab of onion and go with it. That's some good stuff there. And you always keep a piece of bread, because if you swallow a fish bone and get caught, you eat a piece of bread, a whole piece, and it'll wrap itself around that bone, and it can go on down your stomach, and the acid in your stomach will eat that bone. So you might want to keep that in mind. You're ever eating fish, and you see they always give you a slice of bread. That's what that's for. Because we ain't perfect. We don't get all them bones. Once in a while you miss one, and that's why when you go to a restaurant, they give you that slab of bread. Keep you from choking to death. So anyway, Mom gets the old table, and she covers it up with a plastic-looking tablecloth deal. And I didn't know anything about cleaning fish. Why, hell, she had an old spoon. What the hell she gonna do with a spoon? She ain't gonna eat that damn thing raw, is she? She goes, well, I'll show you. Here's a clamp deal. You clamp this on the tail, and then you hold on to it by the head, and you run that spoon from the tail toward the head, and them scales going everywhere. Of course, when she got done processing it, I won't go through the rest of it, because YouTube will stick it in my ass and break it off. She cleaned that fish and put it in a clean pan. And she washed her hands off and washed the knife and the spoon. Proceeded to go through that whole stringer full of fish till we got to the very last one. She said, now we take them in the house, and I'll run them under the sink water and put them in a bowl. Now we have these for supper. Like, oh yeah. So she goes in the bathroom, washes her hands real good, and I'm sitting there looking at these fish in the bowl. And there they are, naked. No scales, no head. Well, they ain't even moving. Well, that was pretty bad. So she proceeds to put salt in the water and stir the water, and she pours it off, and she did that several times. And I seen her come out with this big old giant skillet. I mean, that thing was big enough you could have put a spare tire in it. She pours that thing full of grease, and she gets the cornmeal out of the refrigerator, grabs the salt and pepper off the table, and each one of them she'd salt and pepper, and she'd roll it in that cornmeal. I said, what are you doing that for? She said, well, that's how you cook fish. Well, she'd toss that in that grease on the stove in that big pan, and it'd make a sizzling sound. And wasn't long, and as that fish started getting done, it put one hell of a good smell all the way through that house. There's nothing better than the smell of cooked fish. It's like cooked chicken. It just permeates the air. It hangs around like a bad fart. Well, we sitting there, and she's cooking that, and she goes, well, now comes the bad part. I said, well, what's the bad part? She goes, cutting those great big old onions. I said, what makes that so bad? She goes, you obviously ain't cut onions before because you're little. You're about to find out. She got one of them big old onions out, looked like a softball. She put that on a cutting board, and she cut each end off, and then she went from the ends that she cut off from one end to the other end. She peeled that thing out of there just like it was a jewel. Like, well, I don't see nothing so bad. She goes, no, here comes the bad part. Now you got to slice that onion. She set the onion back up there, and she took her knife, and she cut them about the width of your fingers. And all of a sudden, I don't know who had the most tears running and nose running, me or her. The only good thing is I can back away from it, kind of escape the fumes off of it. She couldn't. She had to hang right over top of it because she was slicing that whole thing. Well, she sliced the one onion and proceeded to go wash her hands and cough and tears running down her face. And I'm with her, tears running down my face and nose is running. She goes, well, I got one more to cut. Then I can put them onions in a bowl of water and I'll stick them in the fridge. Now, you remember this, boy, because don't want you to ever have to count on somebody else to cook for you. So I took it in, just like a fish takes the water. She grabbed another onion, and we went through the same process. Her peeling that onion out, cutting each end off, and then she went to slicing. And we was both right back again, noses running and tears running. Them were tears of joy. And I hung on it, and I learned to cook from my mom and my grandma, be my dad's mom. My mom didn't teach me much of anything except for smoking cigarettes was good for you, she said. Of course, she never let nobody know she smoked, except for me and my dad. But anyway, back to the story. That night, my uncle and dad come in from the field, and there was that big old plate. And I mean, that was a big-ass plate. Had paper towels in the bottom, and them fish were stacked up looked like cordwood. My dad and uncle, they was coming up on the porch, heard them talking, and they're like, man, something smells good. I wonder what the hell that is. He opened the door, and he goes, yep, we having fish tonight. I said, yep. I catch them, I get to eat them. He goes, no, you catch them, we get to eat them. I said, well, as long as I get the first fish, I don't care. I said, I got to try this. It smells pretty damn good. So Dad and my uncle go in and wash their fingers and come back, and Dad takes his hat off and hangs it on the back of the chair, because you didn't sit at the table to eat breakfast, dinner, or supper with a hat on, because he'd knock it off your head. So he hung his hat on the back of the chair. And of course, back then we didn't say grace, because my dad was a heathen, and my mom was married to the heathen. So therefore, I guess that made me and my uncle little heathens. Whatever the hell that may mean back in those days. I guess we were just a family of heathens. So we proceeded to start passing the food around. First it was the onion, then we passed the fish, then we passed the fried taters, then the carrots. We had steamed carrots. Then Mom started passing this big-ass salad bowl around, and it had these tongs in it. Looked like a big set of pliers. Well, I didn't know how to use those. So I started reaching in my fingers. Mom goes, no. You got to have some manners. Here, I'll use the tongs because your hands ain't big enough. And she tonged me some lettuce while I was fascinated as hell. I said, I need a pair of those. We're out there working on fishing poles. Those hooks, instead of me getting stuck in my fingers, I could use those there tongs, grab some hooks. She goes, no, your dad's got needle-nose pliers out there and a vise. You leave my tongs, these are lettuce tongs, for the house. Well, I didn't argue with her. I was too concerned with getting me a piece of fish. So I reached down to grab my fish, and she goes, don't you dare, because them fish got bones in them. I'll rake it off the bones, and I'll smash it and check it, make sure there ain't no bones, because I don't want you choking to death. She put me a slab of bread there, and I watched her. She took her fork, and she drug the chunks of meat off of it, and then she took the fork, and she'd smash, and she'd check with her fingers, which nowadays, they would have thought that was a god-awful sin, that you got your fingers in somebody else's food, but she was checking the food because she didn't want me to choke to death. So, when she was done, she goes, it's safe to eat now. So I watched everybody else grab a piece of onion. So I'm like, where's my onion? She goes, you sure you like this? I said, I'll give it a try. Well, she put that big old slab of onion on there. You take a bite of onion, take a bite of fish. Why, dude, that was anything any better? I'd ate the whole plate if I could have. But I was sitting there chomping on my food, and wasn't much talking going on. It was just all assholes and elbows and lip smacking. Everybody was glad to have what we had to eat, and we was thankful for it. We got done with like a bunch of little piglets that just got done sucking on their mamas. We retired to the living room. Belly is hurting. Picking teeth with toothpicks. Wondering how come we ate so much, and there was still a pile of fish left in the plate. My mom put them in the oven so nothing would bother them. When they cooled off, she'd stick them in the fridge, and then the next day, we'd have what's left. 'Cause that stringer was a 4-foot stringer, man. It was plumb full of those fish, just full we could get it. That's fine, we eat them next day. This is before microwaves. We didn't have a microwave, so Mom would have to put them in a big pan with no napkin or anything. And she'd put them in the oven and warm them up. 'Cause there ain't no way to do it other than that, 'cause there wasn't no microwave back in those days. Those didn't come down until years later. But we made do with what we had. That night, go in and go to bed, and just before I went to bed, Dad told me, he said, they're going to come out tomorrow and empty the trucks into that big grain bin and take you some trucks. I'll put you over there, and you sit over there and play under that shade tree until we're done, because I don't want you around that equipment. Okay. So I went to bed and still stuffed. The next morning come, and I got up, met my dad downstairs, and me and my uncle sitting there eating breakfast and drinking orange juice. Dad said, well, when you guys are ready, let me know. I'm going to go down and get a 2-ton truck. So we were finishing up eating and go to the bathroom. Wasn't long, and here come that old 2-ton truck. And we got in the front seat on the passenger side. Dad drove us down by the machine shed, and down there you had to turn to the right, and there was a big giant couple grain bins, and he backed the truck up there to them grain bins, and here comes these big trucks. And they're unloading the beans and corn stuff in that auger, and it goes uphill and goes in the top of that bin. But down below there's a door. He made sure that was shut and locked. Otherwise that stuff would spill out on the ground and have a hell of a mess. That was going to be the winter money. So Dad set my trucks down there by the shade tree, and he said, you play here, you'll be out of the way, and don't move from this spot. He said, if you got to go to the bathroom, you holler, and one of us come over and help you. So I was sitting there playing my trucks, and next thing you know, I see this real tall guy that appeared over there with the other guys working around the truck. And they got that 2-ton truck bed raised, emptying the grain out of it. He's like, hey, come here. So I was like, where you been? I ain't seen you in quite a while. He goes, I've been busy. He said, you want to play a game? I was like, yeah. He goes, well, the game is follow the leader. I said, well, how's that go? And he goes, I'm the leader. You follow me. No matter where I go, you follow me. I was like, but I'm supposed to stay here by this tree. And he goes, well, we won't bother nobody. So okay, I'll play. I'll be kept busy, you know. So he walks around tree to tree, and I'm following like a little duck. Next thing I know, he winds up over there by the 2-ton truck. And my grandpa and my other uncle and my mom's brother, my dad, was all working there toward the back. So I watched him. He went to that truck. He climbed over the first part of the frame, over the drive shaft, and over the next part of the frame. Then he headed out toward the trees. He said, I got to follow. So I walked over there to the frame. I was trying to pull myself up on it. Finally got one leg up there and swung and fell over to the other side, fell between the frame and the drive shaft. And I swung myself across the drive shaft onto the ground, dusted myself off and got back up to the other side. And out of nowhere, something had me by the pants, beat my ass and hollering. I noticed it was my dad. Oh man, he beat my ass. I told you to set your ass over there by that tree. Stay away from the equipment. Didn't I tell you? But Dad, and he beat my ass again. Finally, my grandpa pulled him off of me, and he goes, just what in the hell was you thinking? Don't you listen? I said, but I was playing with my friend. We walked around the trees, and we playing follow the leader. That's what he said. So I followed him. He went across. He goes, if that truck bed, we hadn't seen you, and that truck bed would have come down, it'd have cut you in half. It'd have killed you right on the spot. That didn't mean nothing to me. I was a little kid, I didn't understand. But I got my ass beat. When they got done emptying that 2-ton truck, Dad told Grandpa, he said, you get him, get his ass, and take him back up to the house and leave him with his mom. And he looked at my mom's brother, and he goes, and you go with him to keep him out of trouble. His mom's got a lot of stuff to do, and you can help babysit. I'm paying you good money. So I was still bawling. Grandpa put me in the truck, and he goes, it'll be okay. Your dad just a little hot-tempered. It'll be all right. So we head up to the house, and I'm still crying. My mom hears the truck. She comes walking down to the gate. And there I am. Grandpa sets me out, and I'm still bawling. And I run to my mom, like any little boy does. You get in trouble by your dad, you run to your mom. Make sure you get in there ass whooping. Well, my grandpa was explaining what happened. Mom set me down, and she wiped tears off my face, and got a little napkin and wiped my nose, and she goes, I'm not going to scream and holler, but you know your dad's got a bad temper. What you did was wrong. You could have got killed. Now, it's all over with and done. Don't do that kind of stupid shit no more. On a farm, you get killed doing stupid stuff. You're just lucky he caught you and whipped you instead of that thing coming down and crushing you to death. Being a little kid, I didn't understand, but Mom's words seemed to kind of alleviate the problem. So I hung on to her, and she carried me in the house, and she goes, I'd whip your ass, but I think he whipped your ass enough. Go in there and take off them dirty clothes and get in the bathtub. So she run the water, and I stripped off, and she set me in the tub, and I was sitting there playing in the tub, having a good time. I'd forgot about the ass whooping. My ass was probably still red, but I'd forgot about it. Nowadays, I figured I deserved it for the stupidity, because it could have got me killed. But, kid, you do stupid stuff, and you don't realize how stupid it is until you get years later, and you realize, yeah, I could have got killed. But got done, I was tired, so my mom let me lay on the couch after I got dressed, and I was laying there sound asleep. Later on that day, my dad come home in the evening, and he come in there, and I heard him telling Mom that he didn't mean to whip me like that, but it scared him more than anything, and then it pissed him off. And I heard him, and I just laid there quiet. I thought, no, he's going to come and get me again. He come in there, and, are you awake? Yeah. He goes, hey, so I'm sorry about whipping your ass earlier. It's just, you got to understand, if I hadn't seen you and we'd have lowered that down, you'd have got cut in half or squished to death. And he said, I don't think I could live with that. Okay. You ain't gonna do it again, are you? No. You gonna stay where I put you? Yep. He goes, well, come here. He picked me up and gave me a hug. Well, hell, I forgot all about it real quick like. I was just glad that I was back in his good graces. We could be friends now. So that evening I laid there with him and watched the news. And then he woke me up after the news because I kind of started dozing off. And you better head up to bed. Take your uncle. He's over there asleep in the chair. Go wake him up. And you guys go in and go to bed. And we got a big day tomorrow. Okay. So I went over there and touched my uncle's arm. And he was like, yeah. I said, well, we got to go to bed. It's time for bed. I said, you ready? He goes, yep. You got to go to the bathroom? I said, I don't think so. And he goes, I don't want to see your plumbing leak, so you better get in there and check. And then I'll go to the bathroom and we'll head up the stairs. So I went in and sat on the toilet. And finally I got done. I waited in there in the kitchen. He went in, went to the bathroom. We headed up and went to bed. Now, if you want to hear more about this story, join me again when I'll continue the story. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one. Good night.